Hi everyone, this is the Serenova Crafts podcast. It is June 3rd, 2015, and I'm your host, Jessica. I'm a little disorganized as always, but I'm 99% sure I fixed my audio problems. I actually did a quick test before I started recording this morning. I may or may not stick the video at the end because it's rather silly. And my hair's a mess. But anyways, I did a quick audio test, and I have come to the conclusion that the webcam needs to actually be sitting on a regular monitor, because the way it's set up and the microphones and everything, I think that the reflect back from the monitor actually impacts the microphones. And so I set it up on Kevin's computer monitor, which is like big. Which I have behind my laptop. I'll remember to take a picture with my phone to show you the setup to insert here. So that's my setup. Now you know what I'm looking at, when I'm recording, but having the camera up high like that, helps with the bounce back and the voice and the audio and stuff, so I'm gonna keep going with that. It's not like he's using it. He's not home right now. He's gone to work. So whatever, right? It's no big deal. I have sock knitting for you. Not much lace knitting. And a sewing project. And I have been spinning, but I didn't take the bobbin off the wheel because it's more brown. And brown yarn on a brown bobbin does not make for interesting video. But I'm working on it. I'm going to take it to spinning with me tonight because our second spinning group meeting is tonight. But first off, I have three podcasts. One of them is one I was watching, but they went on hiatus for a month and now they're back. And the other two are new. New to me. They're not new podcasts. Both of them are, over 50 episodes, and one of them's over 100 episodes, so, they're not new podcasts, but they're new to me, courtesy of the Sock Minis, swap group on Facebook. I'll try to remember to put a, link. I'm gonna make a quick note to myself, because I cannot type and talk at the same time. There we go. I have my iPad. So I have iPad, laptop that's doing the recording, Kevin's computer monitor, camera. Yeah, it's a setup. But hey, it works. And I'm sitting on the giant beanbag. I'm actually sitting cross-legged on the giant beanbag, which has slightly freaked out the cat, and she won't come up here right now. But I actually like sitting cross-legged. It's comfortable for me. I know that in, another 10 years, my hips might not like it, but, for now, whatever my 20s, hey, it works, right? So, anyways, back to the podcasts. So, the first one is Two Tangled Skeins. And I really liked the dynamic, so I went back. When I start watching a podcast that has a lot of episodes, what I do is I go back 10 episodes from their current one when I find them. And I watch those 10 episodes, because I figure it's a good idea, because A, that's 1 day of work with it running in the background. And B, that's a good way to know if I'm going to enjoy the podcast or not. At least for me, that works. And because I binge watch them all day while I'm working, because I work from home and I have my work laptop, and half the time I'm not listening to anything for work. So what I'll do is I'll put something else on my personal computer, or because my PS3 has YouTube, on our giant 60-inch television. Watching knitting podcasts on a 60-inch TV is actually really entertaining. But anyways, and actually I can use the said 60-inch TV like a computer monitor if I want, but having a cable strung across the living room is a tripping hazard for me, so I'd rather use the PS3, which is already hooked up to the TV, and I don't need to move any cords. But anyway, so Two Tangled Skeins, I went back. It's a 3-woman podcast, currently down to 2, because one of them is taking a break for personal reasons, which is totally cool. So it's only the 2 right now. Link to their blog, their Ravelry group, and their YouTube in my show notes. The second one, which is the one that's back from hiatus, and these are listed in the order I watched them in the last week, not in the order they've actually updated. So, hey, a bird just landed on the porch. Anyways, it's In a Snit. They were on a month hiatus. That's why I haven't mentioned them before. And again, it's a multi-person podcast. And they meet in one of their houses, sit, and chat and record. And I really like it. And then me and my dog and some yarn. And this woman's in Texas, and her golden retriever, who looks very old due to the amount of gray in his muzzle. She's really nice to listen to. A little more subdued than I am, but, you know, that can be good. And she apparently yarn bombs her crafting room. Yeah, which I think is really cool. And if I had a crafting room, I'd probably do that. But considering my crafting room is our second bedroom, which Kevin and I both use for stuff, and actually I need to finish cleaning up because I made a bit of a mess when I was cleaning earlier this week. So, like, my way of cleaning is make a mess, but it's a more organized mess, and then do something with all the different piles. So, yeah. So in last week's episode, I asked you guys to tell me why you enjoyed my podcast, and I got a lot of really great responses. Most of them being, you know, I'm energetic and I'm entertaining. I don't really think of myself that way, but this is just how I am, and I'm me, so, you know, that's how it is. But I did get a really long message from, I have her username written down in a different app on the tablet, but I'm trying to go to my message box so I can give you, come on, Ravelry. So March Skies, who is, I'm pulling up her profile, I hope you don't mind me giving your first name if it's on your Ravelry profile, who is Katie from Washington State. She sent me a really long message, as response to my prompt last week, which I thought was really great. You have to excuse me for a moment, I need to blow my nose. Like, badly. Alright, so, took care of my nose. But she sent me this really long message, and I won't read all of it to you, I'm not going to read all of it, but she did, have a couple of questions that I'm going to answer. She's interested to hear about my background with, she called it Jewish/Hebrew school, and the correct term is Hebrew school. But you can call it Jewish school too. I mean, I call, you know, Sunday school for Christians, like, oh yeah, Christian Sunday school, like, because I'm not Christian, you know. I had to have somebody tell me what CCD stood for last week, because I overheard it in conversation, and I didn't know what it means, because I'm not Christian. And I have the vague idea that CCD is religious classes for a specific thing, but, like, I don't know what the words stand for. And now I don't remember what I was told, of course. You know, so she says, but I'd be interested in hearing about your background with Jewish Hebrew school. So sorry, I don't know the correct term. Hebrew school's fine. You did say you went to public school. Did you go to an after-school program to learn Hebrew? Also, I'd love to hear more about your trips to Israel, your impressions, thoughts, etc. And then she asked about my socks. So I'm going to completely derail the podcast for the next 10 minutes while I ramble about my trips to Israel. Feel free to skip to this time if you don't want to listen to it. Now I need to remember to go back and put that in. But if you don't want to listen to it, go to this time. So I actually got my old passport, because I actually had to renew my passport this year, because my first trip to Israel was in 2005, and so that's when I got my first passport. So what they do with your old one, see those dots? See those dots? Those are punches in the cover. Sorry, wrong way. See that? Because when you get a new passport, you get to keep your old one, but they punch holes in the cover to show it's not active anymore. So I have the stickers on the back from customs from my 3 overseas trips, 2 to Israel, 1 to Japan, and then I have I guess it's called immigration even if you're not immigrating, so like the stickers that let you into the country. So the green one is from my first trip in 2005, and the black one is from my second trip in 2007. And these I got in... Sorry, I'm not talking while I'm trying to get the camera steady. So I got these in the Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv, Israel. So the first trip I went on was through the Jewish Community Center in Boston, and it was specifically designed for teenagers. It was called Teens for Tzedek. Tzedek spelled T-Z-E-D-E-K. That's not the Hebrew spelling. The Hebrew spelling is Tav Zion Daled Kuf, if I remember correctly. And I know those letters mean nothing to you if you aren't Jewish, or Israeli, or no Hebrew. But Teens for Tzedek was like a charity program, and it was supposed to be a month long, but unfortunately I only got to participate in half of it because my father had planned his yearly trip to Florida to see my family down there for what would be the second half of the program. And since plane tickets were already bought and they're a pain in the butt to change, I missed the second half of the trip. So the premise was that about 10 Americans would go to Israel for 2 weeks, meet up with a group of about 10 Israelis. We were all about the same age. We were all 14 to, I was the oldest at 17. So 14 to 17, so a group of middle teenagers. And we went to Israel for 2 weeks, and then after a week's break, the Israelis came to the U.S. for a week. And so what it was that the first week we spent volunteering for charity. So I was at a school for children with multiple sclerosis and muscular dystrophy in Haifa. And we stayed at a youth hostel there. And the Israelis actually stayed with us, even though, like, they could have gone home to their families every night. Part of the thing was get us all living together to get to know each other. Our first weekend there, we did do a homestay. And I didn't tell my mom this story for a couple of years after the trip, because what happened was that on the Friday night of our homestay weekend, we go to, was it Saturday night? No, it was the Saturday night of the homestay weekend. We went to the house, me and one of the other girls, and honestly, it's been 10 years, I'm not remembering anyone's names, I'm sorry. Went to so it was a girl, and me and another girl went home with this Israeli girl, and it turns out her family was British. So all of her family spoke perfect English, which was great because my Hebrew stinks. And I'll tell you why in a few minutes once I finish talking about this trip. So, her grandmother was hilarious. Like, oh my god, that was a great dinner on Friday night. But on Saturday night, we met up with a bunch of other people from our group who were doing their homestay weekends, because we spent 2 nights in these people's homes. And, we went to a park in Haifa. Now, Haifa is on the coast of the Mediterranean. It's right there. They don't really have, at least the area we were in, there weren't real beaches, because there's a bunch of, like, sea cliffs and stuff. But the park we were in, was right on the ocean. Gorgeous, gorgeous view. The Mediterranean lit up at night. Oh my god, it was so pretty. But one of the Israelis showed up with alcohol, because even though we were so the drinking age in Israel is 18. I was 17, and I was the oldest person in the group, which meant none of us could have alcohol. But someone's parents went, yeah, sure, here, take a case of beer. I decided someone needed to be sober, and I'm a bit of a mother hen anyway, so I didn't drink. But I mean, I had fun hanging out in the park. But cue 3 o'clock in the morning, and we need to find a way home. And I don't speak Hebrew. And I have the address of where we're staying written on a piece of paper. Now, remember, this was 2005. I didn't have a cell phone, so I had to find a payphone. I had to figure out how to use an Israeli payphone. And then I had to figure out how to call an Israeli taxi without knowing even enough Hebrew to ask for directions. So, thank goodness someone at the taxi office spoke English, and they sent a taxi driver that spoke English, And I was able to hand the taxi driver the address and say, this is where we're staying. Could you please take us there? Because everyone else was drunk. And I was the only one sober. Yeah, I didn't tell my mom that story until about 3 or 4 years ago. But I was responsible about the whole thing. You know, I made sure everyone got home. I made sure everyone was safe. But it's funny. I felt safer sitting at a park in a foreign country at 3 o'clock in the morning than I did taking the city bus in my hometown. Honestly, I think that says something. It really does. But after that, after our Homestay Weekend was done, we then got on a bus and we toured the country. But not the entire country. We actually didn't make it down to Eilat, which is down at the very southern tip. Eilat is on the Red Sea. So way down at the tip. And it connects to the Sinai Peninsula. It's way down there. And actually, it was kind of funny because my family operates on the principle of no news is good news. So if you are traveling to another state, and by another state I mean leaving New England, because for us, Mass, New Hampshire, Maine is all just kind of together. So if you're going on a trip that's more than 4 hours away, and you're going to be there for an extended period, we operate on the no news is good news policy. Which means if we do not hear from you, we are going to assume everything is going fine and you are having a good time unless we hear otherwise. It saves a lot of stress. But the chaperones on the trip didn't quite understand that, so at the end of our first week, as we were getting ready to go on the bus, they made me call home. Literally made me call home, sat me down with the phone, and did not leave until I'd called home. So I didn't call my mom, I didn't call my dad, I called my grandmother. Because I figured she was the one, her and my grandfather were the ones most likely to want to hear from me. And I figured she'd tell my mom she heard from me and I was doing fine. I wasn't worried about it. So I called Grandma, and we have a quick, 10-minute chat, and I hang up. And I tell the chaperone, I said, we don't need to do this again, they know I'm fine, whatever, right? And, there was a terrorist attack while I was there, but it was in a city that was 3 hours away from where we currently were. And again, operating on the no news is good news policy, my mother knew my itinerary, knew where I was supposed to be, knew that I was supposed to be absolutely nowhere near the attack, and thus, because she did not hear from me, did not worry. All of her mahjong friends, which is a group of women from our synagogue that my mom plays mahjong with, thought she was completely crazy. But they also thought that she was completely crazy when she signed the permission slip for me at 14 years old, when I was taking a drawing class at the New Hampshire Institute of Art to draw nude models. Because being the only person in the class under 18, I had to have a permission slip signed. And the thought was, we have been drawing people nude for 5,000 years. It's a classic thing to do with art. There's absolutely nothing sexual about this whatsoever. Yeah, sure, go draw the nude people, whatever, fine. They weren't even good-looking people. They weren't, honestly they weren't. But anyways, my mom's actually really cool about stuff. She helped me dye my hair blue. Oh, by the way, what did I do with my passport? So in this passport, which I got in 2005, right? My hair was blue in the photo. Not that you can see it, and it's not focusing, but my hair was blue and I had my passport photo taken. Courtesy of my mother. Hi, Mom, I'm pretty sure you're not watching. But so, my mom's, I think my mom's a really good parent, and I've seen some bad parenting and stuff, but yeah, so my mom freaks out the mahjong ladies, because they're much more, leash holdy, hand holdy, I need to know what my child is doing every minute kind of thing. And my mom and I are just if we haven't heard from you, we assume you're fine. That's how my family operates. But anyway, so for the second half of the trip, we went to, Sfat, the Golan Heights. We got to tour a winery and a olive oil plant. That was cool. Then we spent a night in the Negev, and then we were in Jerusalem, and then we did so when we were in the Negev, we did the Dead Sea. Then we were in Jerusalem, where we did the Kotel. A lot of people call it the Wailing Wall, but that's not actually what it is. I think the name comes from the fact that a lot of people pray out loud, and some people don't do it quietly, but also because it's the only remnant of the temple we have left, because the Jews' temple in Jerusalem was destroyed for the second time by the Romans, and that's when it was not rebuilt. So, it was first destroyed by the Babylonians. The Babylonians then let the Jews go. They go back to Israel. They rebuild the temple. So that is the Second Temple period. Then the Greeks invade, and we have the whole Hanukkah story. Then the Greeks go away. Then the Romans invade, destroy the temple. That's when Jews are dispersed into the diaspora, and which is anywhere that isn't Israel is the diaspora for Jews. And then the temple's destroyed. And then Muslims built the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount. So, and that, if I remember correctly, the Dome of the Rock is the place where Muhammad ascended to heaven. But don't quote me on that, I've never read the Quran. And even though I've been to the Western Wall, we call it the Western Wall because it is actually the Western Wall of the building. Or, well, of the platform that the building was on. So, like, say this is your flat plane that the temple is built on, right? But Jerusalem is a really hilly city. Like, we're talking, like, it's in a mountainous region. So they actually had to create a flat space to build the temple on. So the Wailing Wall is the wall of, basically the retaining wall that holds the foundations of what used to be the temple in place. So it's basically a retaining wall, but it's as close as Jews can get at this point, unless they go into the Dome of the Rock. And there's a huge contention about that. I'm not going to get into the political correctness of it. I'm not going there. I have never actually been in the Dome of the Rock. I wish I had had the opportunity when I was there, because from what I've heard, artistically, it's stunning. I've seen pictures of it, and the enamel work on the tiles, oh my god, I just want to see it because it's pretty. Like, I don't even care what religion built the thing. It's supposed to be aesthetically gorgeous, and I just want to see it. But anyways, back to my story. So we first went to Sfat, which is where why can I not think of that religion? They believe in reincarnation. They have the set number. I'll look it up, and I will put it in the show notes for this religion. And the same group of Baha'i. No, so when I was in Haifa, when we were doing I'm backing up here a little bit. When we were doing our volunteering in Haifa, we did the Baha'i Gardens. But there was this other religion that's in Sfat. But, like, Sfat is like an artist colony, and I saw some amazing artwork that was... So, the artist would take a chapter in the Torah, which is the Old Testament for Christians, and would illustrate it out. But would illustrate it using the text of that chapter, well, or that, like, section of the book. And so, it was really cool to see. I wish I'd gotten a piece, but unfortunately I didn't have the money because they were hundreds of dollars. But Sfat was really cool to see the old architecture, the old city, all that stuff. We did get, on our way to the Golan Heights, we drew very close, as in I could have spit out of the bus window and hit Lebanon, close to the border, right? So, like, I was literally about 10 feet from Lebanon at one point. And all there was separating us from another country was a fence with barbed wire on top. International borders are weird in the Middle East. So then we did the Golan Heights, and we went to the Yarden Winery in the Golan Heights, and they actually had a really neat way of making a sweet white wine where they froze the grapes and then crushed them. It was really interesting. It preserved a lot of the sugars. And then we promptly went across the street, literally across the street, and saw how they make olive oil. And then we drove from the Golan Heights down to the Negev. And I know I've been rambling for a really long time now. How about this? I will talk about my second trip to Israel in my next podcast, because I'm already at 25 minutes. I'll talk about my second trip next time, because I'm already gone on long enough about this one. We go to the Negev Desert. We're going to stay at a Bedouin camp, and I got to do a camel ride and all that fun stuff. And, so I ran into someone I knew. So, for conservative Judaism, there is a youth group called USY, which stands for United Synagogue Youth. And it's for the conservative movement. And I was a member of USY when I was in Hebrew school. And we had, like, dances and get-togethers and things like that. It was a way for Jewish kids to socialize with one another. And they had a summer camp that I went to every year. It was only a week, but anyways. I don't remember this girl's name, but I knew her, and she's from Newton, Mass. And she was there. She was in Israel that summer on a USY trip, and I was there that summer in Israel with the Teens for Tzedek trip, and we were in the Golan Heights at the same Bedouin camp on the same night. It's a thing with Jews that you run into people you know when you're in Israel. And that was really hilarious, because I hear my name called, and, like, my full English name, which a lot of the Israelis were calling me by my Hebrew name because it was easier for them to pronounce, because Hebrew doesn't have the J sound in it, doesn't have that J sound. So if they're not good at their English, they usually say my name like Jessica, because they don't have the J, they don't quite understand how to make the J sound, right? And my Hebrew name is Johanna, which was much easier for them to pronounce. So I hear my full English name yelled from a group of people I know I'm not with, and I turn around and there she is, and there's a bunch of other people I recognize from Newton, Mass, you know, sitting around a campfire, so I go spend a few hours with them. But then the next morning, they got us up at 3:30 in the morning, because we climbed Masada to watch the sunrise. It was absolutely incredible, and I wish I still had the photographs I took. Unfortunately, a year after I went on this trip, the hard drive I had these photographs on crashed, and I lost most of my photos from the trip. Because, being the digital age, I took digital photographs, and I don't have any of them printed out. It's just one of those things. And so, it was absolutely gorgeous. The sad thing is that if you know the story of Masada, the Romans besieged I think the correct term is a mesa. It's a flat top, like, thing coming out of the ground with, like, nothing around it. I'm not sure if that's the correct geological term for it, though. And you can still see the remains of the 3 Roman camps in the desert that were built to besiege it. And we climbed up the Roman road that the Romans built to get to the top, because the Romans were trying to crush the Jewish rebellion in what was then Palestine. Now, this is 2,000 years ago. And, actually, we're talking more than 2,000 years ago now, so 2015, we're talking, like, 10 BCE. Like, Anyways, roughly 2,000 years ago. They're trying to crush the Jewish rebellion. And a bunch of Jews had barricaded themselves at the top of Masada, and so the Romans besieged it. Everyone ended up dying. And by dying, I mean everyone committed suicide because they would rather kill themselves than be taken prisoners or slaves by the Romans. Yeah, very sad story. It's not pleasant. But there's still all the historical ruins up at the top, so that was interesting. So the sun rises. Absolutely gorgeous watching it rise over the desert. I mean, it was breathtakingly beautiful. And then we get the tour, and then we hike down. Because at this point, it's only about 7 o'clock in the morning, because sunrise in the desert is like at 5 a.m. And the gondola starts running at 9. Because they have a nice air-conditioned gondola you can take to the top. But no, it wasn't running yet. We had to climb up and then climb down. And then we went to the Dead Sea, and then we went back to Haifa. So we went to Jerusalem before we went to the Negev. Because I'm remembering things out of order because it's been 10 years. But after we went to Israel. And when we were in Jerusalem, we did the Western Wall, and we toured the old city of Jerusalem, and I got to see the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we also did Yad Vashem. And Yad Vashem is the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. And when I say it is the most depressing place I have ever been, I am not joking. I have been to the memorial in Hiroshima, Japan, commemorating the atomic bombing, and Yad Vashem was more depressing. So when I say it was the most depressing place I've ever been, I mean it. Like, it was, I don't even know how to describe it. It's one of those things you need to do to understand. It's, even 10 years later, I can't put it into words. Because they start you off with a video of how rich Jewish culture was in Europe before Hitler and the Nazis. And then you go through the museum in chronological order. So it starts off very subtle. A few laws here, a couple of robberies there, and it slowly builds. And you watch it build. And Yad Vashem is meant to be walked in a very specific order. And like, you can go backwards, but you're not really supposed to. So you enter at one end of the building and you exit at the other end of the building. And it's shaped like, the building's shaped like a triangle. So so the shape of the building and the way you walk through it actually mimics how things built over the course of the 30s and World War II. And so you start at the very tip, and you go back and forth from one side of the building to the other. And at the end, there's a room with a list of names. And it's a list of names of everyone they could find who died in the Holocaust. And not just Jews. Everyone. And it's just walls of books with names. And the room is massive. And at the end, you walk out into this garden. And there's a series of trees planted. And each tree planted... Sorry, I'm getting emotional talking about it, thinking back on it, because it was just so... It was a very emotional experience. But Jews have what we call righteous Gentiles, which is someone who wasn't a Jew, but who, did something great for the Jewish people. And so there was a lot of people who did things in the Holocaust that were considered righteous Gentiles. They took Jews in, they hid Jews, they helped get Jews out. There was the ambassador from Japan actually didn't agree with what his country was doing. And he made thousands of fake travel documents for people so that they could get out of the country using his position as ambassador. And each person has a tree planted and a plaque commemorating them and what they did. And so you've walked through this incredibly depressing museum in this video, and you end with all those names. And then you walk out into this garden, and it's just so hopeful, because you're in this... I mean, okay, if you're there in the summer, it's bright, and it's sunny, and there's all these trees, and it's a beautiful garden, and you need that after going to that museum. It's something you need. The other thing we did in Jerusalem was see the Dead Sea Scrolls, which that was really interesting, and it completely not nearly as emotional as Yad Vashem was. And so, but then, that's what we did in Israel. Then we went to the Negev, which is the desert. We did Masada. We then did the Dead Sea, which was entertaining because they told all the girls and the guys, because, if they shave their face, do not shave for 3 days ahead of time, or it will hurt. Because nothing can live in the Dead Sea, not even bacteria. And if you have any cut, any nick, any scrape, it is going to burn. And I had a cut on my finger, and it burned. Like, it was, searingly hot. But I braided my hair, because my hair even then was really long and curly. It's always been that way. And I got out, and my braid was caked white from the salt and the minerals, right? So we get back to Haifa, and and we all shower because we're all covered in salt from the Dead Sea. Cause you can drive across the country in 3.5 hours, so, and we all repack, and then we have to fly back. And it was funny because flying home, we had to leave Haifa at 4:30 in the morning to get to Tel Aviv in time to go through security, because you need 4 hours to get through Israeli security because they are thorough, to get back to America. And so what we did was we flew from Tel Aviv to Zurich, Switzerland. We had a 4-hour layover in Zurich, and then I got to Boston at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My mom picks me up from the international terminal at Logan. We drive to my grandmother's house in Billerica, Mass. And we're there, and we're having dinner, and I pass out at the kitchen table. Because at this point, I have not had a full night's sleep in 3 days. Because we got up at 3:30 in the morning, we climbed Masada. We then did the Dead Sea the same day. We then drove back to Haifa. We were up until after midnight repacking, doing all that stuff. We then got maybe an hour or two sleep, drove to Tel Aviv, got on the plane. I can't sleep on planes, so I got no sleep on the 4-hour flight from Tel Aviv to Zurich. And then I got 0 sleep on the 8-hour flight from Zurich to Boston. And so I have had about 5 hours sleep in the last 3 days. I crashed so hard. So hard. And then, so I pass out at dinner. My mom drives me home. I crash in bed. I sleep for like 6 hours. I get up. I unpack. I repack my suitcase. I don't even do laundry. Because I have to be at my dad's at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, because I got home on a Friday. 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, to go with my dad back to Logan to fly to Florida. So I get to my aunt's house. It's about 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon. Now, 24 hours previously, or 36 hours previously, I was in Israel. And now I've gone from Israel to Europe to New England to Florida in about a 48-hour period. And my aunt had waiting for me the 6th Harry Potter book. Because it had come out that summer. It came out in the U.S. while I was in Israel. And she bought a copy, and she had it waiting for me, and I was so pissed because I was too tired to read it. Right? So that I pass out in like mid-afternoon, and I don't wake up until about 11 o'clock Sunday morning. And then I take another 3 showers because I still have the Dead Sea in my hair. It was just one of those trips. Okay, so now that I've rambled on for half an hour about going to Israel, I will talk about my second trip to Israel next time. And I will say this. They do not teach you Hebrew in religious Hebrew school in the U.S. I do not know how to speak Hebrew. I know how to read Hebrew. I know how to pronounce Hebrew. But I do not understand it. The best example I can think of is like church Latin for Catholics. You know what it sounds like. You know how to pronounce it, but you don't know what the words mean. It's that way anyways. So now, knitting, because this is a knitting podcast. And, knitting podcast. I shall talk about knitting. So I'm almost done a sock for Tina's September, because I'm doing a sample for her. So here it is. I'm on the cuff. Right? So, I did my standard regular toe, fish lips, kiss heel, and I'm doing my ribbing for the cuff, and then I have the second ball of yarn to knit the second sock. My personal socks, because I started them last week, are almost at the heel. And the yarn is twisted. Woohoo! Here we go. So here they are. Here it is. These are striping. This is Patton's Croy in the Rusty Stripes colorway. And that is going to have a different color yarn for the heel. I'm going to use this for the heel. Because I don't want to disrupt the stripe pattern on the top of the foot. So I'm gonna do that for the heel. And then I got the so they actually started our sock club early at Twill. So on Friday night, when we were all there, she gave it out. So we got project bags, and they have the Twill Sock Club tag on them. And we got the bags, and then we got 2 patterns and yarn. So the pattern I am doing for my socks is called Diamonds in the Fluff, and it is by Leslie Comstock. And it's a free pattern available on Ravelry. I've just cast on the cuff, so I only have like 2 or 3 rows on the cuff, so it's not much. You can't really see it. It's done on 1.5 US 1.5 needles, which are, I don't remember how many millimeters. 2.5 millimeters. So here is the yarn. And I'm going to insert a picture of the actual skein here. So that you can see what it looks like both in the skein and caked up. And this is, the dyer is 100 ravens, the base is Yakos, and this is a custom color for the sock club, for twill, called Nelson's 5 and Dime. And the reason it's called Nelson's 5 and Dime is because the space where the yarn shop is used to actually be a store called Nelson's 5 and Dime, which I think is really cool. So, and here it is. I'm starting to work it up. Like I said, this is only like 3 rows, so yeah, it's not much. It's just a simple ribbed cuff, and these are top down, and I will knit a pattern as written, so I am doing top down socks. But also, so the Tina September socks, my personal sock club, and these socks are being entered in the Sock It to Summer contest, which is run by Amanda at Not a Podcast. I will include a link in my show notes to her Ravelry group, because you need to be a member of the group to participate. And so I will make a note to add the link in my show notes. I'm trying to open the right program here. I first participated in Sock It to Summer last summer, and I'm doing it again this summer. You can enter socks that are less than, a pair of socks that is less than 50% complete. Each completed pair of adult-sized socks gets you 1 entry. It runs from June 1st, which was Monday, through August 31st. So it's the 3 months of summer, June, July, and August. And it ends on August 31st. And then on September 1st, Amanda locks the thread and picks the winners. So that's going to be interesting. So that's 3 pairs of socks right there that hopefully I finish. Well, hopefully I finish 2 of them this month. I have had absolutely 0 progress on my lace shawl, so that's not going to happen. But I did do some sewing over the weekend, so I'm going to pull all the stuff out of this bag because, yeah, I'm trying to show you the bag, not what's in the bag. So, at my local shop this past weekend, they had a bag making class, and I was the only person that signed up for it, so it was just me and the teacher. But, so we made a reversible canvas tote. So here it is. And there's the back. I really liked the owls. Like, I thought they were cool. And then it's reversible, so let me show you the other side. Because it's completely 100% reversible. I made the large size, because there's actually 2 sizes of the tote. They made the large size by scaling it up, by scaling the pattern they found. They had up by 20%. So, here it is. And yes, I censored the owls on the pocket on purpose. So here you go. There it is. Completely reversible. And it's all, like, top stitched around the edges. If I can get the edge in there. Yeah. So, and it's top stitched. So it's actually a little finicky, but it's not that hard. And I have enough cut-offs from, like, when I cut the shape of the bag and stuff, that I can make some project bags out of my leftovers. And I got to keep the scraps, so I'm always happy with that, right? So I think that brings us to the end. I spent about 20 minutes rambling on about Israel and about 15 minutes talking about... This has been a... It's supposed to be knitting, but it's not kind of podcast. And that might actually be my episode title. It's supposed to be knitting, but it's not. There will be more knitting for you next week. But I am going to talk about my second trip to Israel next week because this is already long enough. I'm at 45 minutes recording right now, and I only need to cut out like a minute or 2, so it's still going to be really long. So I'm going to talk about my second trip, which was in 2007, next time. But at the end here, I forget whether I did a thing in my rambling about pictures. I think I forgot to. If I forgot to put the pictures in, if I forgot to, like, give myself a cue to put pictures in while I was rambling. Hey, so apparently the video didn't record all the way when I was going on earlier. Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but I got cut off at the end. So I was only able to dig up one photo from my 2005 trip, and I had to re-download it from Facebook, because when I first signed up for Facebook in 2006, this was my profile picture. And it's me standing in front of the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Yeah, that's the only picture I could find. I wasn't able to find anything else, unfortunately. Unless I have some CDs buried somewhere with pictures burned on them, but I'm not terribly hopeful, and besides, those would be at my mom's. But anyways, thank you for watching. You can find me as Serenova on Ravelry and Twitter, and Serenova_Phoenix on Instagram. And you can find all the show notes on my blog or my Ravelry group. My blog is myknittinglife.wordpress.com, and the Ravelry group is Serenova Crafts Podcast. So yeah, that's it. You're going to get the picture, then credits, then my audio test from earlier, and then that's it. So, hope you have a good week. I'll see you next week. Bye! Audio test, do I sound okay? I know the TV's on, my hair's a mess. Audio, do I sound okay?